Hello YouTube. Today we're going to be talking about manlets and the amount of hatred that they receive both online and in the real world. I've wanted to make this video for a long time, and actually it's an idea that I've had even before I had a YouTube channel, so that's saying a lot. But I could never quite find out the proper way to go about it. And so I decided to just put all of my notes together and give it to you guys. It's just going to be a conversation. This is a video for short men. It's a message for you guys, the short kings, quote unquote, but not limited to manlets. It's also going to be something that every single man, I believe, should hear, because I'm going to be revealing some harsh truths about life as a man and the reality of our existence on this planet. So I think that this is going to be greatly beneficial for you, whether you are short or not. This video is going to be very long, of course. So sit down, make yourself comfortable, grab yourself a drink, and let's talk together about manlets and the lives that they have to endure, be it in the fitness sphere and on Earth in general. So before we get started, a manlet, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about here, is a term used to describe a man of short stature, especially if he attempts to make up for this lack of height by putting on muscles. That is the term. It's usually used on internet forums or on 4chan, which I understand some of you have had a life and therefore you are not actually wasting your days on this godforsaken website. Now, this leads to a very interesting question. Where exactly is the manlet cut off? At what height are you considered a manlet? There are many charts online about 6 feet being the manlet cutoff, 5 feet 10. Lots of things are not based on stats or reality at all and tend to be grossly exaggerated. So, because I want this video to be clear, I want to give you my chart and my manlet cutoff. It goes as follows. To me, to know if you're a manlet, looking at your height, we can start, for example, with an extreme, with 4 feet 10. At 4 feet 10, you are absolutely a manlet, but you're not just a manlet, you're also a dwarf, meaning that clinically speaking, you are considered an adult midget. This is, of course, terrible for you, and I'm sorry if you are caught in this predicament. Then, if you are between 5 feet and 5 feet 3, in my opinion, you are a manlet, but not just a manlet. You are a turbo manlet, meaning that it's not just that you're short, you look like a middle schooler if you're lucky. You look like a child, and you'll most likely look like a child for the rest of your life. Then we have actual proper manlets, which is between 5 feet 4, and 5 feet 6. This is manlet territory. If you are between these two heights, you're a manlet. There's no way around it. Then, if you're between 5 feet 7 and 5 feet 9, you're average. So anyone who tells you that you're a manlet at these heights is delusional or trying to make you feel bad, because the majority of the planet is this height in terms of the male population, or shorter than that, so you're fine. And then if you're between 5 feet 10 and 6 feet, you're above average. So you're not just king of the manlets, you are way outside of manlet range, you cannot be called that. And then for anyone above 6 feet, you already know that you are not a manlet at all. Anyone who claims that below 6 feet means you're a manlet is a complete idiot. This was just to give you a good idea of what we're going to be talking about here, because these numbers are important. See, based on this, we know for a fact that the vast majority of the male population cannot be called manlets. And yet, the term manlet and manlets in general seem to be prevalent in the fitness sphere. If you want to play a fun game, look up on one of your favorite fitness influencers, you will find out that they tend to be very, very short. They tend to be 5'5", 5'6". And maybe you don't realize it because you only see them on camera with no context, but that is the reality of the situation. So how is it possible that they could dominate this platform even though they make up only 20% of the male population? Well, it's because people who are short tend to have lots of advantages when it comes to fitness. The first being one of perspective and perception. You see, fitness and YouTube fitness is not about who is the most intelligent or most capable. It's all about looking big on camera. If you can look big on camera, a lot of people are going to associate that with competence and are going to follow your advice. It starts and ends there. This means that manlet have a leg up, quite literally, when it comes to things like this. Then you also take into account the fact that sports like bodybuilding and sports like powerlifting favor short men because they also have advantages over taller people. For example, for bodybuilding, the fact that it is much easier to look jacked if you are short. Now, this one seems to puzzle some people still, so I'm going to explain to you in the simplest terms why it is. Short men look jacked faster than tall men for the simple reason that they have less real estate to fill out. So if you're someone, for example, who is 5'6", most likely you're going to start having a very good physique around 160, 170 pounds, even lighter than that if you're lean. And to get to these body weights, it's not going to take you that long. So a ton of short men, of manlets, within 2 years of going to the gym, they look tremendous. Then you take a guy who is 6'2". For him to look tremendous, he will have to be much higher than 160 in body weight. You will need to be at least 200 pounds. The bare minimum is 200 pounds, which means that he's going to have to train for much longer because he has more real estate to fill out. This could be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, etc. Any tall man who has been into a gym knows that. I remember seeing dudes who started training yesterday and they looked bigger than me. They were not actually bigger, but they looked bigger. Why? Because they had shorter limbs, they have less real estate, so they look bigger, faster than you. This, of course, is all on a visual level, because on a scale, and even if you are next to the guy, you are of course bigger than him. But that doesn't matter on the internet, because there are no scales on the internet, right? There's not a banana next to my head for you to know how big or tall or short or small I am. You sort of have to guess, and your eyes, for the most part, are mistaken. They confuse reality, which means that you can look at a guy who's 150, but because he's close to the camera, you'll think, oh my God, the guy is gigantic. It's a little game that I like to play that's called Juiced or Manlet. I go on Instagram and I look up a guy and he looks tremendous with veins and big pecs. And I'm like, duh, this guy mugs me into oblivion. He's much bigger than me. Then the game is Juice or Manlet. 90% of the time, the answer is Manlet. You look up the dude in a context with taller people next to him and you have a laugh. Because the guy, when he's not by himself with a pump in front of the camera, is going to look very, very small, even if he's next to people who don't actually lift. There are tons of examples on the internet of buff dudes who are getting mugged by non-lifters. That is simply the reality of the situation. But again, because YouTube fitness doesn't function like this, you have no idea, and therefore you end up thinking that these people are actually bigger than life because there is no scale on the internet. And this is a form of delusion that also spreads to manlets. I could not tell you the amount of time, because I'm a fitness YouTuber now apparently, when I had people tell me, oh, I'm bigger than you and I train like this, so this means that the way I train is better, which is already stupid. Then I go onto their profile because they have a public profile and I end up finding a guy who's like 5'6" and 160. And it's like, dude, I'm 50 pounds heavier than you, right? I can eat you for breakfast. You're not bigger than me. But even manlets have started to believe that they're big because the internet has completely rewired the way they think about themselves. This is a different problem, and we're going to be talking about that today. What I want to focus on instead is the impact that this has on tall people, because there is a lot of hatred against manlets on the internet and YouTube fitness in general. I've seen tons of people complain about manlets because apparently manlets are the root of all evil. They're the reason why we have body dysmorphia. They're the reason why there's bad information. All of which comes from tall men that used to follow manlets and one day realized, hey, this guy is an actual midget and I've been taking advice from him. No wonder why I'm still so small. This guy is only big because he is short, therefore he has no merit and he is a piece of shit. All manlets are terrible people. And sometimes, I think that this sentiment is justified because as a tall man, I've also had to deal with that. I've had to deal with influencers who are manlets, because it's the bulk of popular influencers on the internet, who did not realize that the advice they were giving to the general population was terrible because it only really pertained to them. It only really pertained to their fellow dwarfs, but not everyone is a dwarf. Case in point, for example, and things that I like to repeat, squats. You listen to a manlet, the guy has legs like this, he's going to tell you, oh, go ass to grass or it doesn't count. The issue is that I have legs like a human being, and therefore, when I go as to grass, my back flexes, my lumbar spine is under flexion, and I cannot actually do that because, again, I'm not built like a fridge. Another mention, conventional deadlift. Oh, if you don't pull conventional, you're a bitch. Okay, great. But when I bend over to grab the bar, my back rounds because I'm not as short as you. So what exactly am I supposed to do? And a ton of tall men actually got injured following that stupid advice. Another one that I like to point out is the no isolation thing. I rant about that a lot on the channel, and for the most part, I understand that this comes from manlets. It comes from manlets who do get pretty good results when they just spam chin-ups and bench for their triceps and biceps, But that advice only really applies to them, and yet they still spread it. So with all of this compounded, you can sort of understand why so many people hate manlets so much. I just want to remind all of the tall guys that have started to develop a form of resentment towards shorter dudes, be it because it's jealousy because these guys are bigger than you faster, or because they make you feel bad because they can do things that you can't, that not only is it also true the other way around, but also that it's not necessarily malicious, meaning that these short dudes are not doing that thinking, hey, I'm going to sabotage all of these tall guys that get all of the chicks so that they are going to break their back. No, it's just that every single fitness YouTuber can only speak from perspective. We can only speak from what we know. It's the same for me. How many times have you heard me say things like, oh, he's 160, he's small, right? I even did it in this video, right? Oh, he's 170, he's small, you can't be big at that weight. Why do I say things like this? Well, it's because I speak from perspective. I'm 6 feet. If I were 160, I would be very, very small. So, for someone like me, 200 pounds is the cutoff. I need to be 200 pounds to be big. But you could be someone who's 5'6", on your chair looking at me and thinking, dude, like NH, I'm 160, I'm big. What the fuck do you want from me? I can never be 220, I'm too short for that. Do you want me to be fat? And the answer is no. I'm just an idiot, and again, I speak from perspective. This hatred and this general distrust towards manlets on YouTube Fitness has led to a very interesting phenomenon. A phenomenon that leads short men to lie about their height. Lying about your height is extremely common on this platform, and again, I don't really blame manlet, I understand why they do it. Even for me on my channel, the number one most asked question I get is, how tall are you? The second one is, well, are you French? And then the third one is, people tell me that my accent is unbearable, which I do not necessarily disagree. Now, for the first one, how tall are you? This is a peculiar question, because you would think, well, this is bodybuilding, like why don't they ask how big your arms are or how heavy you are? This is much more relevant. Why do they ask about your height? Well, it's very simple. People ask about my height because they're trying to figure out if I am a manlet. So in a sense, when someone says, oh, how tall are you? They're really asking, hi, can I actually trust what I'm seeing on camera? Or are you just a small, short guy who is angle frauding, who is using tricks of light to make yourself appear bigger? But if I met you in real life, I would actually mistake you from a middle schooler because in truth, you are very, very small. It's a legitimate question to ask, but I also perfectly understand how annoying this must be for manlets, because for me, I can just say, well, I'm 6 feet, and that's that, I'm 6 feet. But if you're 5'5", dude, you worked for years to have a good physique or to be strong. Some random guys like, how tall are you? Say 5'5", and they're like, oh, yeah, of course. So that explains your results. Like, manlets constantly get their accomplishment diminished because apparently it's much easier when you are short. Well, it's true, but also keep another thing in mind. Being short also means that you have lesser potential for absolute strength and absolute size. So they might get more results faster, but down the line, they don't get as much as they would if they were bigger. We all have the advantages of our disadvantages. But this is why, as I said, many people don't want to have their commitment to the sport questioned like this, and they don't want people to leave their channel because, well, you're short, so you give bad advice. So what they do is they lie about their height. I could cite you so many fitness YouTubers that I know for a fact are lying about their height because I'm 6 feet and I know what 6 feet is, and these guys are not 6 feet. But you see, this form of craziness of trying to lie about your height is not limited to the fitness sphere. I'm certain that you as a man at some point in your life or another, especially if you're a manlet, have lied about your height. This is a thing that men do. And it is to a point where it's almost a cultural component of being a man. I recently saw an experiment that they've done on the campus, a college campus that wasn't actually that far out from where I live, where they stopped random men on campus and they said, hey, how tall are you? And after they got the answer and they wrote it down, they would tell the guy, hey, can we actually measure you? And the few times, I think it was 10 or 15% of the time when the guy said yes to being measured, what was found out is that he lied. Times and times again, people lied, and it was the majority of men. The only percent of the male population on campus that didn't lie were people who were 5'11" or taller. These didn't feel the need to lie. Why? Because they saw their height as a source of pride. They were proud of being that tall, so they had no need to lie. But for the rest of the population, even people who are not technically manlets, they always felt the need to embellish their height. And that is for a very simple reason. It's because being short, being perceived as short, makes you lesser than in the eyes of others. That is an absolute truth. If you're tall, maybe you don't know that. I know that sometimes you have tall men who act surprised or like, what? Being short is difficult? People treat you differently because you're short? That doesn't make sense. Yeah, it doesn't make sense to you, Mr. Matchat Thundercock, because people treat you very differently because you're tall. People give you respect. People actually look up to you quite literally. For manlets, it's the exact opposite. People look down on you because you're short, even if they know nothing about the content of your character or who you are as a person. So, what you do naturally when you're faced with that level of injustice is that you start to lie. You start to lie about something that can be easily disproven. I've had surreal situations in my life where I would go camping or I would go fishing with friends of friends and meet new people, and at some point the topic of height comes up and people state their height, and I always make sure I go last because I want to give these guys a chance to reveal their cards. And times again it's the same thing. You'll have a dude who I know is like 5'6", 5'7", who will claim something ridiculous like 5'10", and then you'll have the poor unfortunate guy who is going to claim 6 feet. Then it's my turn and I tell the truth. I say I'm 6 feet, I'm not going to lie. And it's always funny because their first reaction is to try to make me taller. So they're like, no, you cannot be 6 feet because I'm 6 feet. So you must be 6 feet too. And I know I'm 6 feet. So I say, no, I am definitely 6 feet. You see what's happening here? It's like the entirety of the male population below 6 feet wants to be taller. So they want to inflate the curve because it is the only way they can feel good about themselves. It's also because women, which is going to be a relevant topic in this video later on, have absolutely no fucking clue what 6 feet is, so you can lie about it. But what you cannot lie about is the truth. You cannot lie about the truth to yourself. You know that you're short, and a lot of the time, other men and the rest of the people around you are also going to know that you lie. So why do you lie? Well, again, you lie because it's the only way to actually try to do away with the stigma of being short, even though the stigma is still there, you cannot remove the stigma. It's the same with having a deep voice. For some reason, as a man, and I say for some reason, I know exactly why, it's biological, but if you're a dude and you have a high voice, you're going to be perceived like a bitch. People are going to judge you based on that. It's just the nature of the beast. So what happens is that guys are going to fake a deep voice. That is even a thing on the internet. Again, I'm not going to cite names. Maybe some of you guys know who I'm talking about here. There's a guy on YouTube Fitness right now who fakes a deep voice. I know for a fact that this is not his voice because sometimes he talks with his real voice. And this is the funniest shit because this means that the guy, before every single video, has to retrain himself to use the deep voice. I say it's funny, but at the same time, it's also deeply sad because you know exactly why the guy is doing that. He's doing this because he knows that if he speaks with his real voice, he's not going to be respected as a man. And again, I say this about height and things like this. For me, you don't know if this is my real voice. Maybe this is my real voice. Maybe this is the way I'm supposed to be speaking. And every time I start a video, I'm like, okay. Hi YouTube, hello YouTube, how are you doing today? It's a possibility, you don't know that. I could just be very good at faking a deep voice. It is ridiculous, but some men, their life is so tough because of things that they cannot control that they start to develop things like this. Manlets are no exception because to be a manlet is to be deemed not manly. You are not manly if you are a manlet. I would even go as far as to say that you are not a man. In the eye of other men and other women, you are less than man. And that is terrible, and it is a fate that I wish on absolutely no one. But this is something that short men can verify. In the comments, if you are short, let me know right now. Am I correct or am I completely delusional? I'm certain that you know exactly what I'm talking about. On your day-to-day life, you are dealing with behaviors and disrespect from people that you know for a fact you would not have to deal with if you were taller. And maybe you've started to second guess yourself and think, well, maybe it's just me, maybe it's my personality. In this video, I'm here to be honest with you. It's not. It's because you're short. Most of the time, these people don't know your personality just looking at you. They only have one information, and that you're short, you're a dwarf. So they're going to be treating you horribly just based on that. And I say that, I'm not guessing. It's not me imagining things because I used to be short. It's why I wanted to make this video. I have things to say. I've lived through things that I wouldn't say traumatized me, but made me completely black-pilled when it comes to other people because, well, I was short most of my life. I spent the first 15 years of my life short, 5 of which were from 10 to 15, where it was my formative years in a sense. And I saw the way people treated me. I was 5'2", something like this. I was disrespected on a daily basis. It had gotten to a point when I was 15 where people who were like staff in a boutique or in a shop would treat me horribly, even though I was a paying customer. For the longest time, I thought, well, maybe it's because of me, because I'm weak or something like this. And then I had a growth spurt. And I grew almost a foot in the span of 2 or 3 years. And when that happens, it's like with dogs who grow too fast and are not yet aware of what their new body is. So they still act like puppies, but with a lot of strength and weight. I was the same way. I was still a manlet inside, but in the body of someone who was 6 feet. And the behavior of people around me transformed, meaning that I was the same guy with the same personality, but suddenly people respected me. Suddenly people actually helped me, went out of their way to help me, or were actually showing, again, a level of decency that is expected from humans. And that, in truth, my friends, made me disgusted because I realized that most humans are pieces of shit that judge based solely on the way you look. It's the Chihuahua versus Pitbull thing. It's a truth of life that if people perceive that there is nothing about you to be feared and you are not intimidating, they're not going to respect you, because respect is mostly based on fear when it comes to interpersonal relationships that are not connected to intimacy. So it's always better to be a pit bull. But if you are a manlet, you cannot really be a pit bull. You're going to be stuck as a chihuahua forever. And I have a pretty good story about that, actually. So when I was a kid, it's a story I said, I explained on the channel in the past, I was bullied extensively by people who are taller and bigger than me because I was always the shorter in my classrooms. And one of the men that used to bully me when I was a kid in middle school lived in my neighborhood, so I would come across him from time to time. And at some point he went away for a reason that I don't know, because maybe I was lucky and I never came across him again. And that was during the time period of my growth spurt. So I only saw him again after my growth spurt. And I remember like as if it was yesterday. It was in a swimming pool. And when I saw him, I froze. Of course, a natural reaction. I saw someone who used to beat me up. So I was getting ready for a fight or for something to happen. And I was very surprised to see him look at me, realize who I was, and then come up to me with a big smile and an extended hand to shake my hand in a very cordial manner. Where I was completely despondent because I didn't understand what was going on. And essentially, he wanted to become my friend. I couldn't wrap my head around that. At that moment, I was just happy to not get beaten up. But then it sort of dawned on me why this was happening. It's simple. It's because beforehand, I was shorter than him, so I was a victim and a prey. And after that, I was taller than him, so I was a potential dominant force and a potential ally. He saw in me the strength that wasn't there before, and in his head, it made total sense that if I was weak, I was to be bullied, and if I was strong, I was to be befriended. Yes, this is absolutely disgusting, but this is also the way most men think. If they look at you and they don't perceive threat, or they don't perceive that you are competition, they are going to ignore you. So they're going to despise you through their complete disregard of your person, or they're going to try and abuse you because they're going to see that you cannot defend yourself. Is that true? Absolutely not. You could be a martial artist, you could be actually very strong or very resilient or all of these things, but it will not stop the way these men are going to interact with you. And I'm certain that at this point, some of you guys, some of the short men that are listening to me, you know that what I'm saying is true because you've experienced it on a daily basis. But you might still cling to a false sense of morality, thinking to yourself, oh, humans are not that bad. Surely we all judge each other by the content of our character. Get rid of this. All of that is garbage. All of these are lies. And if you actually looked at reality, you would know that these are lies. And the reason why I know that these are lies is because, as fucked up as it is, I need to be honest with you guys. As someone who is now tall and big, I get it. I get it. When I meet a guy who's 5'5", my first thought is, that's a bitch. This guy is no danger, is no threat to me because he's small. That's what my brain thinks immediately, my reptilian brain. Do I like thinking like this? No, but I can't lie to you and tell you it's not the case. This is my first idea and perception when I meet a small guy. On the flip side, if I meet a guy who is 6'8" and built like a truck, my first thought is, okay, better be respectful towards that guy because he has the potential to kick your ass. This is the Chihuahua versus Pitbull thing. It is an absolute injustice of life, but as a man, as a short man, this is something that you have to deal with. You are going to end up being bullied by people who might even be good people, sadly, simply because they perceive you to be lesser than a man, so they're going to simply do to you whatever they want because you are lacking power. And the worst thing is that you have absolutely no one to go complain to because this is not perceived as a form of discrimination. I don't know if you've noticed, but making fun of short men, bullying short men, all of that is not just tolerated, it's actually encouraged. You will see movies or even commercials on TV making fun of short men all the time. No one cries about it. No one rings a number to say, "Don't make me fun of short men, you have to do something." No one cares. It's seen as funny that you are given a shitty hand and now you have to deal with it and the rest of the world gets to bully you for it. It's even to the point that using the stature of someone, a man, as a mean to disparage his character was not only something very prevalent in the past, but it still is to this day. If you look at Napoleon, for example, of course I was going to use Napoleon, the propaganda ran by the Brits, les roast beef, tried to present him as a short man. And it was trying to do that because short men, even back in the days, were seen as short-tempered, as less manly, as less capable leaders, etc., etc. So, by trying to paint Napoleon as a short man, as a manlet, the goal was to, in a sense, destroy the war effort by reducing the faith and the trust that his men had in him. It was actually genius. So genius, by the way, that some people still believe it to this day. Propaganda about the short stature of Napoleon is still alive and well. People still make fun of him for it, even though Napoleon was 5'10". He was not short. But the mere mention of him being a manlet was enough to create some serious damage. We saw that recently again with Trump. A big thing that people like to peddle about Trump was that he had small hands. Now, does he have small hands? Maybe. I don't give a fuck about that. What matters is what it means. What does it mean to have small hands as a man? It means that you're less strong, you have less grip, you're less capable. Imagine if the same thing was done to a woman, for example. Imagine if I ran a campaign, a propaganda campaign, presenting a woman as more emotional because, well, she has her periods, so of course. This would not be tolerated in today's age. It would be called sexist and shut down. But if you're a short man, this can happen to you. This happens to you on a daily basis. This transfers to the everyday life because there's no restraint, right? Maybe you're someone who doesn't like black people, but you have something in you like a lock, a social lock that tells you, hey, it's not socially acceptable to make fun of black people and call them monkeys, for example, so you don't do it. But for short men, not only do people who don't like short men, quote unquote, naturally just get to dish it out, people who might not have this inner detestation for short men end up hating on short men because it's the last thing available. See, nowadays, if you're Asian, I can't make fun of you because you eat cat, because apparently it makes me a racist. I can't make fun of black people, of Jews. The one remaining thing I can make fun of in today's age is short men. So you also see that with comedy, because now you have all of these taboo, all of these sacred cows that cannot be sliced and destroyed. Well, there's only so few topics remaining, so these topics tend to be beaten to death, which is absolutely hypocritical and disgusting because there's literally zero backlash against this, even though short men have zero control over their height. And on top of that, you have to look at other groups that have total control over their condition. The reason why they're being made fun of is completely legitimate, but these people are not allowed to make fun of. Example, fat people. Fat people choose to be fat. You don't just get fat, you stuff your face until you become fat. Fatness is a bad thing inherently and ontologically, so it's a good thing to make fun of fat people, but we're not allowed to make fun of them. We're not allowed, for example, to say that fatness is a reflection of a slothful character, even though it absolutely is. And yet, you can absolutely say that being short is a reflection of your character as a man, it makes you short-tempered, it makes you more of a bitch. All of that is perfectly acceptable because we live in clown world, and sadly, you are the scapegoat. As a short man, you are the only non-protected minority, quote unquote. You're the only group that is technically discriminated against by nature itself, but that society has decided, we don't care. Even though I know for a fact that many short men would actually kill to be able to actually grow. It's to the point where some men go through bone lengthening surgery to gain 2 inches. Fat people can't stop eating cake and you can't make fun of them, but short men almost kill themselves with procedures that are completely barbaric and very painful and very expensive. And yet, it still is going to be the case that if you get that surgery, people are going to point it out and call you insecure, even though that's the fucking reason why you got that surgery in the first place. So, you see, I understand where you're coming from. If you're a short man, I get it. I get that it's not fair. It's not fucking fair. You're absolutely right. And if you're seeking for an explanation as to understand all of this, why exactly are men not included? Why is it okay to make fun of short men? Well, the reason is quite simple. It's because you're a man. As you've understood in the Operation Olympics, men are coming dead last, meaning that unless you're man and gay or man and black, you're not going to be able to claim that you're being discriminated against or that you're being oppressed. So you are going to be dogged on openly by everyone. And if you expect people who should be caring about these issues to take your case and status into account, you can wait until the cows come home, because the people, the demographic that is in charge of deciding who is oppressed and who then comes out and says, well, you can't do this or you can't do that, the big censors of our time, white women are too busy protecting their pet minorities and homos to find time in their busy schedule for you. So this is not going to happen either. And this is true for short men. It's true for men everywhere. It's the reason why veterans in the US are not really taken seriously at all, even though they are suffering a lot. It's why homelessness is not really an issue in most Western countries. It's because the people who are homeless are men, and if you are a man, no one cares about you. Because we are the warrior class. We are supposed to be the soldiers of society, and therefore we are entirely disposable. We are interchangeable. Our lives don't really matter. This has been proven times and times again. There has been experiments shown that show, for example, that if you're a woman and you collapse on the street, people are going to rush to your side immediately to see if you're okay. But if the same thing happens to a man, people will go out of their way to go around the guy because they'll think, well, you're a guy, so if you fall, it's on you. It's your responsibility to take care of that. And the worst part, what I found that is so vicious also with being short as a man, is that not only will you not be protected for being short, so it's not going to be perceived as something that is not your fault and that society should not be allowed to make fun of, it's actually the exact opposite. Your lack of height as a short man is perceived as a flaw on your part. People are going to treat it as if you decided to be short, especially women. Women despise short men because it's almost as if they see it as a crime. Like, how dare you be short? How dare you not have good genetics? This is fucked up to a level that far surpasses any type of racial discrimination, any type of fat phobia, and yet again, it's perfectly accepted. Short men are imbued from birth with a form of original sin that is written on their forehead and that they can never erase. No matter what you do, you will always be perceived as someone who committed a fault in the majority of humanity's eyes, being men and women. It's like having a small dick, and the size of your dick is written on your forehead and you cannot erase it. That's what being a short man is. So, I perfectly understand where you're coming from if you say that you hate life, you hate women, you hate other dudes, and all of that is fucking bullshit. You are right, all of that is fucking bullshit. But it does make sense. Again, I explained to you exactly why it makes sense. But we're going to go even deeper into the rabbit hole of biology and why the life of short men is so difficult. I know that many tall men like to dismiss that, women or other people will tell you that you're being dramatic, it's not that bad being short. No. All of these people don't know what they're talking about, or they know what, no, let me correct that. They know what they're talking about. They know that being a short man is horrible because they treat you horribly. But what they don't like is they don't like to have to accept the fact that they're the ones responsible for that poor treatment. So they'll tell you that you're being too much. In a sense, they're trying to gaslight you. They're trying to make you the culprit when in reality you are the victim. But that is to be expected from humans because we don't like thinking of ourselves as the villain. So we like to paint the other guy as the villain instead. So I'm here to tell you that, yes, if you were taller, your life would be better, absolutely. people would treat you with more respect, and women would be attracted to you. And this is the part of the video when we start talking about women. And to introduce that part of the video, I have a story to tell you, a story that happened to me recently with my wife. So I was on the couch watching TV, and my wife was doing something else. And if you have a wife or a girlfriend, you will notice something interesting with women. Women are directly connected with evolution and nature, meaning that I believe them to be as close to truth as possible when it comes to the way the world works. But because they're very guarded and because women don't, in a sense, like to reveal their cards, you will have a very tough time getting the truth from a woman. In this moment, my wife was doing something else. She was focused on something else. And so her guard was down. And then I just in passing asked her, hey, would you have dated me or given me the time of day if I was short, if I was 3 inches shorter? And without even thinking, she said no. And it was the truth. I could perceive in that moment that she was being truthful. Meaning that if I had been 5'9" instead of 6 feet, I would not have my wife. An entire portion of my life, probably one of the most important, my marriage would not be there for the simple reason that I'm this tall instead of this tall. Sit there and tell me that this is normal and that this is realistic or even just acceptable. It makes absolutely no sense. But get used to it because this is the way women interact with height. There are certain factors in life that women use as markers to determine whether or not they're going to pick a mate, and height is a very important one. To the point that I would even go as far as to argue that it might be the most important one, meaning that as a short man, you're mathematically fucked. Because if you look at the distribution of height between men and women in the US or in the world in general, you quickly find out one thing. The numbers match perfectly, meaning that if the world was a perfect place, because women are shorter on average and the average height for women is 5'3" and the average height for men is 5'7", there should be plenty of short women for short dudes. Meaning that even if you're 5'5", you should easily be able to find a mate. But if you are short, you know for a fact that this is not true. That it is not as easy as that for a simple reason. This perfect equation I just presented to you is not so perfect because even though it is absolutely true that men are going to go for women of all heights, they don't really care, women have prerequisites. They have certain heights that they will not go for. And it's not just that women will only go for men who are the same height or taller. That would be too good to be true. It would already be bad because it means that if you're 5'5", well, you have an entire portion of the female population that will never date you, but it goes even further than that. You know that a lot of women, if they're 5'3", will only accept a guy who is, for example, 5'10". That is common, that is standard. Case in point, my wife. My wife is not 6 feet, but if I was not 6 feet, she would not have given me the time of day. A ton of women are like this, and sometimes it is really, really ridiculous. I know women who are 5'3", so they're midgets themselves, who will only go for guys who are 6 feet. How does that make any sense? It makes absolutely no sense, but they get to. And once you understand that when it comes to women, it's about requirements and not preferences, you will understand why it is so tough to find a mate as a short man. Now, what do I mean by requirements and preferences? Well, I think that men, in dating in general, have preferences. So I'll meet a guy who says, I like my women with big tits. Fine, he likes big tits. But that very same guy, for the most part, if he meets a girl that is cute with small tits, will date her because it's only a preference and because men are much less selective when it comes to finding a mate. Women are not like this, especially modern women. Modern women tend to have requirements. So a girl will say, I want this, this, this. And maybe these requirements are completely delusional, but I find that women tend to not want to budge on these. I know chicks who are like 4 out of 10s. They're not that attractive at all, and they want a guy who's 6 feet with green eyes and a big dick. And it's like, well, that guy, he exists, he's rare, he exists, but why would he go for you? He can do so much better than you. And yet, that chick is never gonna budge. I actually knew when I was a kid a girl who was very attractive. I think she was 10 or 11, I was 9, something like this. And I remember her at that age already saying that she would only date men with blue eyes. If you look up the percentages, that is a very small percent of the male population. And yet, it did not stop her from only dating men with blue eyes. She's now 26, something like this. She's gonna get married to a guy with blue eyes, and every boyfriend she ever had blue eyes. This is what I mean. If you're a woman, you get to have requirements because you're dealing with men who have preferences, so you get to be the hard ass and say, I want this, this, this. But when it comes to things like height, it's not as easy because height is fixated and not something you can change. So you understand, looking at the stats, that there's going to be an issue at some point. Because if every single bitch wants a guy who's 6 feet, 10% of the male population on Earth is 6 feet plus. There's not enough guys who are 6 feet for every single woman on Earth. So what ends up happening is that the portion of the male population that is closer to 6 feet gets preference when it comes to getting mates, and the rest can go fuck themselves. So in a sense, for every inch below 5 feet 7, you lose millions of potential mates, millions, until you reach a point where you're 5 feet 4 and it's like, who can I date? Who can I date? Women who are 5 feet 4 at my height go for guys who are 6 feet. And girls who are 6 feet don't go for guys my height. That's also the fucked up part. You will find for the most part that men have absolutely no issue dating women that are shorter than them because men don't select based on height. Height is not a dating criteria. It's not a mating criteria for us. If she has a fat ass and she's cute, you'll date a girl who's 5 feet, even though you might even be a foot taller than her. That happens all the time. The opposite is not true. And I don't care how many examples I get of, oh, well, this Amazon lady is with a dwarf. Yeah, she's a freak. It's the reason why you talk about it. It's because it's so rare that when it happens, people are like, oh my God. But in truth, it never, ever happens. I've met women who are 6 feet and who are courting me because they were like, oh, I never meet guys who are 6 feet and above in like Spain. So this guy might be the one. Why can't you date a guy who's 5 feet 8? He's right there. He's cuter than me. Why don't you date him? Oh, well, because I will never date a guy shorter than me. That, for the most part, is an absolute rule amongst women. If they don't date someone who's taller, they will at least not tolerate the mate to be shorter. So, if you are short, you are shit out of luck. And anyone who tells you otherwise, anyone who tells you, oh, it's about personality, liar. Liar, liar, liar. It's not. It's about height. Before a woman can even know who you are as a person, she first and foremost looks at you and she looks at your height. Now, I don't want you to think that the only criteria that women look for in a mate is height, because that's not true. It's a mistake. I see many black-pilled bros mate, or they say, oh, it's all about the face, or it's all about the dick size, even though I've literally never heard a woman say that she cared about that. But there are criteria to me that are more important than others. So I selected the ones that I think are at the very top. So you have face, facial aesthetics, you have money, you have status, you have fame, and you have height. To me, this is the big five. This is what matters the most. Personality is contained in status, it's contained in fame, but it's mostly important afterwards to cement the relationship and to confirm the union. Before that, it's not that important. Meaning that the first thing that a woman will see in you is not that personality, it's all of the things I just outlined. And the issue is that the one that is the most evident at first glance is height. It's not even face. People who think it's face are delusional. And it's because, evolutionary speaking, this is the trait in males that is the most evident, but also the one that makes you stand out. Because if I put you in a crowd of other dudes, even if you're super pretty, well, she can't see you. But if you're tall, you're literally above the crowd, meaning that your head and shoulders are above the crowd. And that is, well, a very simple factor that makes you more attractive in the eyes of a woman, because to be attractive, she has to see you first. Then you have other things that short men will never experience. For example, having a woman look up at you. If you're tall, you know what I'm talking about. The action of doing this and having to look at you like this triggers something in the brain of women. Being able to pick up a woman, to swing her around. It's possible if you're 5 feet 5, but it's going to be much more difficult than if you are 6 feet. All of these are very powerful things that tall men employ to get women. And this is the reason why tall men tend to be very successful with women. I know dudes who are complete fucking losers, with no muscle, no fame, no status, no sense of humor, no charisma, no nothing, but they're 6 feet 4, and so they get girls. I also know guys who are shorter and get girls. But guess what? These dudes have to put in a lot of fucking effort. They have to dress well, they have to smell good, they have to be groomed, they have to be funny, they have to be successful in life. All of this shit to make up for one factor that they do not control and was never actually under their control. It's why I say that you cannot make up for height. I know it sounds like I'm trying to blackpill you right now. I'm not. I'm just trying to tell you the truth so that we can look objectively at your solutions here. You cannot control height to the point that I believe, unlike what some people would like you to think, that it's better to be ugly and tall than to be short and gorgeous. The guy who's ugly and tall is going to be more successful with ladies. I have a friend of mine who's 6'3". His face is like a troll. He has a big bulbous nose. He has big brow ridges. The guy is ugly as a baboon ass. And yet, he is married to a total smoke show. Why? Because this is a chick that favors height and power over everything else. So she loves having a big, strong dude that looks like an ogre because it makes her feel safe. If that same guy was 5'5", he would be fucked. His life would be over. He would never find a mate. He was selected based on height alone. I also know a lot of guys who are like 5 feet and who have pretty gorgeous faces, and it does not make them more popular with women. I'm going to say something that is going to be quite controversial, but I grew up in the Asian district of Paris, le 13e représente, and I knew a ton of Asian dudes who were perfect dudes, gorgeous men with abs and like nice pecs. But they were all 5'3", 5'4", and therefore no women would go for them. All of the white women would prefer to go for the other white dudes, and even Asian women would prefer to go for the white dudes or the guys of other races because they were taller. So face can only do so much for you. It's the same for things like fame and money. I mean, yeah, sure, you can get a relationship if you're small and you have a lot of money, but are you going to be happy with that? That's also the fucked up part about all of these things too. Height, just like shortness, is for some reason seen as something that you earned. I know tall guys who are proud. Like they say, oh, I'm 6'4". Like they worked for it. Bitch, that's your genetics expressing itself. You did nothing for that. But just like shortness is seen as a sin committed by short dudes, like, how dare you be short? If you're tall, people will look at you like, oh, you're tall, you're such a good person. It makes no sense again, but this is the truth. And this is why I can completely understand incels. You know, they're being demonized on the internet like they're the worst thing imaginable. No one looks at the life that these guys have to live because for the most part, incels you will find tend to be manlets. They tend to be very short dudes. Short dudes who for the most part are not that bad looking. I could cite you a number of incels who actually are pretty. Like look at Elliot Rodgers. Put his face next to mine. Elliot Rodgers was a gorgeous man compared to me. Are you fucking kidding me? And yet, I'm a gazillion times more successful with women, to the point that I never felt the need to do drive-bys and shoot random females. Why? Because my height gave me an advantage over him. His lack of height made that even with a pretty face, he was never able to actually get women. The fact that he was absolutely insufferable also played a role, but we're going to get down to that at some point. I think that many short men start as normal people, and the treatment they receive from the world turns them into quote-unquote monsters, into quote-unquote incels. And this is because, to me, stature and height goes deeper than just attractiveness, because the way you are treated your entire life has an impact on the way you interact with the world. I think that it is impossible to deny that. So psychologically, being short is a form of trauma. It is a form of mistreatment that you receive from nature first and then from others. It's a double punishment because not only do you as a man, because of society, are going to start feeling less competent because you're short and less of a man, these feelings are going to be not only ignited but also corroborated by the rest of society. So you're going to feel horrible and you might become a horrible person, while being ugly doesn't. An ugly man might not feel the greatest about being ugly, but as long as he's tall, he has other utilities, and all of these psychological bias will not actually come into play because, I've said it once, I'll say it a million times, if you want to understand female and male psychology, men are tools, females are pieces of art. It's as simple as that. A tool can be ugly as long as it is useful, it is still going to be favored. If a tool is half broken or too short to have use, it's going to be discarded and it's going to eventually falter and die. And the perfect proof I have of that is a simple sentence I wrote down in my notes. Female dwarves can still marry. You know what that means? It means that statistically speaking, even if a female is 4 feet 5, so a natural dwarf and midget, she can still marry. Most of them do find husbands. Do you know the percent of male midgets that marry? I couldn't even find a number. It's so low, it's not even reported. Yeah, sometimes you hear about this crazy freak case of that woman who married a dwarf, but in reality, that never happens. These people live and they die alone. Now, if you're 5'5" and you're a manlet, your situation is not as dire, but with what I explained to you previously with statistics, it is still pretty bad. And here's the kicker. If you are a short man and you try to better your situation in life by trying to make up for lack of height, by doing something like lifting weights or getting rich, people are going to say that you're overcompensating. So it's damned if you don't and damned if you do. How many short men watching me right now know exactly what I'm talking about? Or you were being made fun of because you lifted weights. Like, oh, look at the manlet, he has Napoleon syndrome. Ain't that a bitch? You're trying to improve yourself and there's an actual psychological condition made up because it's not real that stipulates that if you're short, you have committed original sin and you trying to redeem a sin you did not commit by putting in effort is worthy of ridicule. And then you're going to tell me that all short men are not discriminated against. That's not just discrimination, it's downright social oppression on every single fucking stratus. Because as a short man, you're not only supposed to accept the fact that the world treats you horribly, you're also not allowed to try to better yourself or else you're called a manlet and ridiculed. And the worst part is that if you complain about any of this, about any of the things that I've shown to you in this video, people will tell you that, oh, it's just a joke. Or you can take a joke. Oh, little manlet, oh, look at him, oh, he's so grungy, he's like a dwarf, oh. Very funny. I've seen that happen to people. I've had that happen to me. And this is typical bully behavior. It's also typical gaslighting and victim blaming. I know that these terms are thrown around a lot nowadays, but in this case, I mean, it's perfect. You're short, you did nothing to anyone, people treat you poorly, and then when you logically try to respond by becoming better or trying to get people to stop treating you poorly, now the fault is on you again. It's always your fault. It's always men's fault, and it's always short men's fault. Now it's your issue because, well, apparently you can't take a joke. Like being bullied for your entire fucking life over something that you couldn't control is a fucking joke. Well, how about that? Short men are twice as likely to take their own life compared to taller men. How's that for a fucking joke? Is that funny? I'm not laughing here. Short men are 8 times more likely to take their own life compared to women. And yet, all of the attention in the world is put on women. Oh, poor women this, poor women that. No one gives a fuck about short men. I never seen videos like this, the one I'm making right now, which is why I wanted to make it, talking about the issues that short men have to go through. They kill themselves all the time. If you're short, it's a factor of death. Why does no one talk about it? Why have I never heard that number on the media? If any other group took their life at that rate, that would be a worldwide cause to end the bullying. People would say, oh, we have to sensitize ourselves to this type of phobia or that type of phobia. But no one ever talks about this. It has a name. It's called heightism. It's the action of judging people and discriminating people based on their height. When is the last time you heard a white woman say, that was heightist of you, honey? Never. Why? Because you're not included. In the great oppression Olympics, you're not included. No one gives a fuck about you. No one gives a fuck about men when men are struggling with their mental health, even though it is the modern world, and I say the modern world, the world that we have to deal with nowadays, that is directly responsible for their suffering. So taking all of these things into account, is it really any wonder why short men are so bitter? It's something that I've seen times and times again, which also is horrible because this means that the depiction and caricature of short men as angry all the time, etc., is true because it's these very caricatures and in a sense these prejudices that lead short men to behave like this, because while you're treated horribly for your entire life, at some point you just lean into it and you're like, fuck it, life is horrible, people treat me horribly. And again, the thing that killed me with this situation is that it's completely hypocritical because nowadays you see so many people who try to use external circumstances like tough life conditions or a difficult environment to explain why someone, for example, became a criminal. But apparently, for short men, that doesn't apply. So not only did you commit a sin by being born, But the treatment that you receive is seen as not only acceptable, but justified, right? It is justified to punish you. And if it turns you into a person that ends up being bitter against the system or the world that treat them like this is also then blamed onto you. Like you are supposed to take it like a good boy and just be the bottom bitch, I guess, for the rest of your life. And this connects back to incels. Look at incels. For the most part, these are just miserable dudes who have no access to women, who have horrible lives, and who just wanted to have their tiny, disgusting caves where they could talk to each other and feel horrible together. Even that was not allowed. Even that was not allocated for short men. You're not even allowed to have your own space to complain. You're not even allowed to complain. You are to be treated horribly for the rest of your life. You are to be shunned by all, and you are not even able or allowed to complain about it. Because modern inclusivity doesn't include those that it has designed as corporates. This is the big explanation as to why, because in truth it makes no sense. White women love to have their pets. They love to have that group that they can say, oh, look at the poor babies, they're so oppressed. It's why they love like cats with only one leg. They like things that are broken, so that way they can take care of them and feel better about their own guilt. That's the way they function. You're short, yes, which means that you're technically an outcast, so you're someone that should be included, but you're not because you're also a man. And because men are the reason for all the evil in the world, you cannot be included because at the end of the day, it, in a sense, competes against that portion of you, that shortness of yours, that should lend you a spot in the group of the oppressed minorities, but it doesn't. And you know what? I think that it's a good thing. I think that the fact that you are not welcomed in with the rest of the oppressed minorities was actually your saving grace. Because if you had made it into that group and you had been welcomed by them, you would have been caught in the same loop. That same loop of perpetual self-victimization that keeps these people stagnant, or these people that are apparently being kept down by the system. The only system that keeps them down is the one that they willingly entered. At the end of the day, I firmly believe that short men are victimized by nature. But keeping up that victimization afterwards is a choice. Being a victim is a choice. It's a status that you get to embrace or not. Many people will try to put that status on you as a short man, and many short men fall for it. They fall for it in the sense that they accepted it. But again, your saving grace is that this label was not put on you with kindness. Right? All of these groups I cited previously, they are being, in a sense, turned into victims, but they have a tough time resisting it because the hand that slaps the label on them is kind. It's like a caress. It feels good. It gives them an excuse. You get none of that. This label of victim is slapped across your face every single day of your life. And the pain that comes with the slap should make you understand that the price you pay for that label is your identity, it is your emancipation, and it is your ability to reclaim who you are. So because you are not caught with all of these subgroups, because you still have, in a sense, your freedom, this proves to me one thing. It proves that you're not like them. You don't need a victim status. You don't need a special treatment. You can fight your own battles by yourself. The worst thing you can do as a short man is to fall for what I call the trap of fake positivity. Fake positivity is everywhere. And I know it's tough because as a short man, again, you've had to deal with so much negativity that any level of positivity handed your way is going to be like fresh water after 5,000 years trekking in the desert. But this water is poison. That comfort it gives you is poison. And I'm seeing that fake positivity now making its rounds within masculine circles. A good example I have for you, for example, is the kings. Calling someone a short king. What is that bullshit? You know for a fact you are no king. You know it. You know that you're just doing that to feel better for a second. But this is no bueno. Because look at the other groups that act like this. Who else beyond short men call themselves king? Again, controversial video, I don't give a fuck. Black people. Black men call each other king, queen. What is that? It is the desperate attempt of a group that is a second-class citizen subgroup within their own country at feeling better about that status. They know for a fact they're not kings and queens. They know it. But telling themselves that makes them feel temporarily better. But because they spam that positivity, they never do anything to actually be better. Instead of calling yourself kings and queens, become kings and queens. Right? It's not enough to just say it. It's the same for short people. Push away that bullshit positivity. And another second thing I want to tell you guys, and this is something I should have said previously because it's very important, but don't deny what you are. I see so many manlets who think that if they try to reject the perception of themselves that they have, it's going to change things. Manlets will tell me, for example, that it's not okay to call someone a manlet. But bro, at the end of the day, that's what you are, right? It is what you are. You're a manlet for now and forever. Accept this reality. It's never going to change. No matter what you do, it's never going to change. The only thing that can change is the perception of it. But if you refuse to accept the existence of the status, you will never accept the perception. And this connects back to what I said about black people, about minorities. This is exactly what these people and these groups try to do. They think stupidly that if they just fake it till they make it and they're positive enough, then change is going to occur. But change is never going to occur. And change especially doesn't occur if the only attempt at change that you make is trying to change the way the world perceives you. Right? Again, that's what white women do. It's why white women are completely inefficient in whatever they attempt. They think that they can save the world and they can cure homophobia by attacking homophobes and saying, oh, stop being homophobic. But that will never fucking work. The only thing that would work is to get people who are targeted by the oppression strong enough that the oppression stops mattering. This is the only way oppressed groups throughout history have ever been able to free themselves from that situation. Emancipation only comes through strength. Repeat it as many times as it is needed. This is the only way to make a change. You want to change the world? You have to change the way you perceive yourself first. The world will never stop perceiving you for what you are. You will always be a manlet in the eyes of others. But the person that should definitely not regard himself as a manlet is you. If you think of that as a flaw, as a weakness, other people are going to utilize you. Change that, modify it, and make it a weapon, make it your strength, and it will never, ever be utilized again to make you suffer. You feel bad about yourself, about a trait of yourself, you fix it, right? You don't wait for people to make you feel better. And you could tell me, well, dude, I'm short, I can't fix that, you're correct. But what you can fix is the relationship with your height. There's a very interesting quote and citation that I like to use that goes, if you turn your weakness into a strength, if you wear your flaw like an armor, then it can never be used against you. You were not born hating yourself for being short. You were not born growing up knowing being short is a bad thing. It's people around you that made you feel this way. You can reclaim that part of you. You can reclaim that relationship you have with your own body. You're short, okay? People can hate that. Nature itself can hate that. Cunts like me can hate that, but you should never hate that, regardless of how the world treats you. And I know it's tough. I know it's difficult, but deep down, you're a man. I don't give a fuck what anyone says. What makes a man is not the distance between the bottom of his toes and the top of his scalp. What makes a man is what's in there. That's what makes a man. It starts and ends there. You can be 3'5", you can have no legs, you can have only one arm. You're still a man and nothing can change that. I don't care if people call you manlets. At the end of the day, this is the truth and it's something that you can never let anyone take away from you, because if you do, then it becomes a reality. If you start to believe you're less of a man because you're short, then it becomes true. And I say that as someone who also knows intimately that if I had not managed through sheer luck to grow tall, if my biology and genetics didn't allow me to become 6 feet, I would most likely be what I just described. I would most likely be a bitter man, because I know for a fact that I had a time period in my life where I was on the verge of becoming an incel. And maybe it's a story I'll tell you guys one day, but I was just this close. I started to hate women, I started to hate everyone, and I was saved, as I said, by a growth spurt. So my message to you is this. You did not have the luck that I had. That's true, okay? That's completely unfair. You're living life on hard mode. But that should also spur you in to become a better person than I am. Because I know for a fact that had I stayed short, I would have most likely become a horrible person. So don't be like me. Don't go down my path and don't go down the path of people who are dealt a terrible hand by life and who decide to just say, fuck it, I'm going to hate the world in return. And I'm not asking you to do that for the world. Fuck the world. The world is made up of people who made your condition worse. In reality, who made your condition exist in the first place, because being short in and of itself is not a bad thing. I'm saying do it for you. Do it so that you can repair the relationship with yourself. You deserve to love yourself, but self-love will not come through others. You will never manage to change the perception that others have of you. The only way would be to change the way that you look at yourself. Because if you can be at peace with yourself and become confident, which is something that is doable as a short man, I guarantee you that the way people treat you is going to change. Is it going to change entirely? No, because people are horrible, but for the most part it will. And the horrible treatment you will receive will do nothing to you anymore. You will be completely impervious to them. And this is why, by the way, people make fun of manlets. This is why when you're a short man and you lift, people poke fun at you. They make fun of you. They say, oh, you're trying to fix your insecurity. They do that because, yes, that's what you're trying to do. And they don't like it. They would like to be able to use you as a punching ball for the rest of time, but you won't let them. Because the fact that they try to poke fun at you improving yourself is the proof that it bothers them. Meaning also that it's the way to go. It's what you should be doing. I've found in life that times and times again, the moment where people are going to become the more aggressive and are going to double down on the insults and the mistreatment is the moment when you are improving yourself. When these people feed you fake positivity and tap you on the back, this is when they perceive you as stagnant. You are staying where you are and it benefits them because they can keep you as either someone to victimize or someone to pat on the back as a pet to feel better about themselves. Once you start reaching liberation, once you start becoming your own person and you stop relying on them, this is when they get upset. This is when they start making fun of you because you are improving and they don't like it. And if you can get to a point in your life where the hatred of others stops impacting you, you'll also find out that the hate that you had towards you will disappear as well. Because the only way people can hurt you is when the hate is already inside. They're just tapping into something that already existed there, that they placed, that they helped fester, but at the end of the day, that is your responsibility to combat. Once that is taken care of, regardless of the size of your body, it will not matter anymore, because you would have gotten rid of the worst type of hatred that manlets receive on a daily basis. And that's the hatred that they have for themselves. And I'm going to leave you with that if you are short. I hope that this video is going to help you make a positive change in life. I'm going to wish you a very good day and I'll see you soon.